Moscow, Ankara and Tehran teaming up to bring an end to Syria's war. The trio has backed a declaration to revive languishing peace talks.
There is no military answer to the Syrian crisis. We believe there is no alternative to the political and diplomatic resolution of the conflict.
The Moscow Declaration lays out key principles for future peace talks, with respect for the sovereignty of a united Syria and fighting terrorism the top priorities. The declaration says civilian evacuation should be completed and the ceasefire extended nationwide. Russia, Turkey and Iran are ready to act as guarantors and say talks will be held in Kazakhstan soon. The plan signals a policy shift for Turkey and is symbolic as the first purely regional attempt to broker peace. Part of the significance of the Moscow Declaration is in who it has left out. The US and United Nations weren't consulted or invited, showing a changing dynamic and frustration that after 5 years of war, talks in Vienna and Geneva have failed to achieve anything. Russia and Iran's military support has tipped the balance of power on the ground in Assad's favour. And Moscow is looking for a way to end the war and assert its power as arbiter. For Turkey, the stakes are high. The war is spilling over its border, with the refugee crisis, attacks by Daesh and the YPG, and this week's assassination of Russia's ambassador to Turkey in Ankara, making the need for peace even more urgent.
Our main priority should not be the regime change, but defeating terrorist threats. All three countries represented here are united in understanding this. We have a common position here.
Bashar al-Assad is a potential obstacle in Moscow's roadmap to peace. His removal, once a hard line for Turkey, seems to be softening, trumped by the need to fight terrorism. But defining terrorism in this alliance could prove difficult.
There are also other groups, some of which are affiliated with the Syrian regime, like Hezbollah, and it is necessary to stop supporting them as well.
Of course, our friends have their opinions about who supports terrorist groups, and we respect that. But others, we cannot accept their opinion.
Is this new regional push the best chance Syria has for peace? And is it the harsh reality of this conflict that once unthinkable compromises may have to be on the table? Yvette McCullough, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss this, I'm joined by Samir Hafez, former coordinator for the Syrian Turkmen Council, and from Paris, George Sabra. He's a senior member and negotiator for the Syrian High Negotiation Committee. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Samir Hafez, let me start with you. Okay. The Moscow Declaration.
Yes.
Are you encouraged, or have you seen this movie before?
No, I'm encouraged for sure, because now Turkey has a new role, and after we have been into Syria after Jarablus and now in Elbab. That means that Turkey now, as it is on the table talking and having discussions very seriously, and as far as Iran and Russia is on all at the three with this declaration, I think it is a good beginning for Syria. That's what my own feelings.
George Sabra, are you as encouraged?
Well, first I would like to say hello to my friend,
sure, say hello.
A very close friend to me, Mr. Sabra, and say hello to him in Paris too.
Okay, there you go, Mr. Sabra. Your friend Samir Hafez says hello. Are you as encouraged as he is?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Samir. Really, also, I'm not encouraged because we have so many doubts about Iran and its role, not only on the ground, and also to face and destroy the political process from the beginning. As Iran right now, they didn't recognize the Geneva Declaration #1, dated 2012, which it was the base of the political process. So really we are in need enough information about what announced 3 days ago in Moscow.
Samir, are you maybe worried? I mean, this is a good point by George Sabra. The Iranians haven't had to make any concessions whatsoever.
Well,
they don't.
In
they
a
don't have to do
certain
anything.
point, I agree, and of course with what Mr. Sabra said. But now we have doubts about what the role of Hezbollah, for example, which they disagree to remove Hezbollah as a foreigners in Syria. So this is a point. But as far as there's a serious willing from Turkey and from Russia, it could be putting a little on a pressure on Iran, because I doubt always Iran that they have the willing to solve this under these circumstances. So maybe they would like to make the war a little bit longer, and they want to have a more big peace in Syria. I mean, to have what they have seen calling the Syrian Mufida, the Syrian part of the west part. They want the whole. So they may be later on delay all the negotiations, or maybe they may put some troubles in having a good peace treaty, but in the end they will be under a pressure to agree on certain circumstances.
They'll be under pressure to agree on circumstances regarding Hezbollah and regarding a lot of the Shia militias operating there, right? Let's flip this then, George Sabra, and ask, what about the rebels? So the Russians and the Iranians so far have been very, very clear that all the rebels are terrorists. The FSA, the other groups, they're all the same as Daesh, they're the same as Nusra, they're the same as Al-Qaeda. How does that get solved? How does Turkey even begin to negotiate that with the Russians and the Iranians, and to say, actually, these are the good rebels and these are the bad rebels?
Really, we hope that the good relationship between Turkey and Russia can convince Russia to start a new point of view of what's happening in Syria. Let's talk about fighting terrorism. Now, Free Syrian Army, supported by Turkey, did their best, and they have a good chance to continue fighting ISIS, not only from Jarablus to Al-Bab, but also continuing towards Al-Raqqa. So I think these allies between Free Syrian Army and Turkish Army, everybody can depend on these allies seriously to defeat the ISIS, because they have people on the ground from the area, familiar with everything on the ground, and they will defend seriously their houses, their cities in Syria. But what about Russia? Are they serious to fight ISIS? While they were bombing Aleppo, ISIS took Palmyra again, and nobody defended Palmyra, neither Russia nor Bashar al-Assad and his troops.
Yeah, that's a good point. I want to ask you, Samir, no United States. I mean, for the past few decades, we've been used to Kissinger and Baker and Condoleezza Rice and Hillary Clinton and John Kerry. Anytime there's a big problem in the world, there's the shuttle diplomacy. The Americans are always there. This time, no America, no United Nations as well. Are you shocked?
Of course I am shocked, but now it is a period of until the transition to Mr. Trump to be the elected president. Now, this time of this zone of time, it is a time to decide and to be quick. This is why Russia been a little bit putting a lot of pressure on Aleppo, right, a lot of pressure on all of these parties to gain as much as they want before the new system will begin with the new elected Mr. Trump. Now, we have we have something to be sacrificed just to stop this blood flow.
Let me ask you about that sacrifice.
Yes.
This could be one of the sacrifices. George Sabra, as a member of the HNC, as things stand, it seems as if Assad will stay. Are you prepared to make that sacrifice for peace?
The problem is not with us as HNC or the opposition. The big question is the entity of Syrian people. I think Syrian people refuse right now and in the future to deal with Bashar al-Assad and to agree with any role for him during the transitional period or in the future of Syria. You know, a killing man like this person, everybody in the world said that he can't control Syria anymore. And now we have to think, is Bashar al-Assad and his regime really control Syria? I think everybody knows that on the ground there are so many sectarian groups led by Iran and in all over the country, in the sea and on the ground and also in the sky, Russian troops control everything. So we want to be really serious to enter political process because really we are in need to stop the drama, to stop Syrian tragedy seriously and as soon as possible.
Strongly put. Mr. Sabra, we're losing your satellite window in the next few seconds, so I'm going to have to thank you right now from Paris. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you on the program. And I have one final question for you.
I would like to first of all...
Yes, of course. Assad.
When I said sacrificing, I didn't mention at all the name of Assad.
I grabbed
Assad,
something,
yeah.
I grabbed it and I expanded on it.
Okay.
I'll allow you to finish your point and then I'll ask the Assad question of you again.
The point is now, there is a transition time to cooperate with the system over there and the regime over there with there's in the Geneva Agreement, which is 2245, and there is an agreement in this transition. There could be on the two sides from the opposition and the rebels, and also from the regime, which is really, you can now reconsider the sacrificing. But Assad is a red line in there.
The Iranians and the Russians are at the table. They've been backing him from the beginning. At the moment, he seems to be strengthened after he retook Aleppo.
I agree with you. But
this sounds so hopeful from you that somehow he'll feel, you know, I'm going to be benevolent, let me step down.
I mean, when you feel all this, you can see what is between the lines, that Assad could be staying for a shorter time just to stop those who are pre-Assad in Syria, to stop them from having a bad coming days. So we didn't talk about Assad stay. Maybe he could stay for a month or even shorter or longer. But this is what they need to stop them and to put them on the table just to have some peace talks. So Assad, in the end, nobody will agree with them. Even his group will be against him one time because of what his policy and what they have done in our history of Syria.
Yeah.
And this massacre was having, nobody will agree with it. Of course, Russia and Iran knows what is Assad, but they want just to have a small balance until we should talk. If we put the first word that Assad, we don't want him to be on control of the country from the beginning, maybe Russia and Iran will not
so
sit on the table.
Those are smart tactics.
It's tactics. Yeah. In the end, it is politics, you know.
Well, these are fascinating times. Let's hope that whatever comes out of this, it does put an end to the unimaginable suffering of the Syrian people over the past 5 years. Samir Hafez, unfortunately, we are out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, George Sabra, a little bit earlier on. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.